Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today we're going to cover a podcast called What the Body, I guess. It has Virgie Tovar on it. I wanted to cover some Virgie content. I think I might do a bit more. She has quite a back catalog. So yeah, but I wanted to just kind of do this as a little preview or just like a prequel or just whatever as we are kind of wrapping up the year, so to speak. I want to go ahead and just thank you guys so much for being here, especially in December. Y'all are the real ones. I keep saying that, but you guys are the real ones that are here at this time on this channel, because a lot of people, they don't want to think about this during this time of the year. So anyways, with all that said, I hope that we enjoy this. I'm expecting there to be maybe like 2 parts to this, maybe 2. So maybe this week and next week, and then we'll start something else probably in the new year. And I don't think I'll be posting as much next week. So yeah. But the week after that will be normal, because I just consider, well, first of all, with a channel like mine, new year, new me, period. No, I'm just kidding. But no, we got to be on it in January. So I kind of want to do daily in January. Let me know if you guys would be happy with that. I feel like I might die if I do daily, but I kind of want to because I'm insane. So let me know if you guys are up for a daily January, if I can sustain it, which I'm not sure if I can, but hey. I wanted to this year, like last January, but I couldn't. But I'm like, maybe I can this year. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know. Let me know if y'all be down for that. Anyways, I will get into this now. Let's go. This is from a year ago. So Virgie has, to my knowledge, she hasn't been around as much. So this is kind of fresh. This is fresh meat, in my opinion. Somewhat fresh meat from Virgie. So let's go now. I have like a gua sha thing. I was watching gua sha earlier. Okay, anyways, let's go.
Well, welcome to What the Body.
Welcome to What the Body.
Yay.
Absolutely. We're so excited that you're here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. We've got Virgie Tovar, ladies and gentlemen.
We are so
I feel a little bit bad covering this because I don't know if it's that big of a podcast, but then I realized I'm not that big of a channel, so then I don't actually feel that bad. So we're diving deep. Okay? Let's go.
excited. You don't even know, but you've changed my life in multiple ways. But you are like the beginning of my body liberation journey about 5 years ago. You were like the catalyst. And so the work that you do and how you show up in the world really matters. And I think that's something that we aren't told a lot as humans. So just so you know, you have absolutely changed my life. So.
Oh, that feels so good. Thank you for telling me that.
Of course. Of course.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we were thinking about just how to intro you, Virgie, and man, we just read everything, and it's nearly impossible to give your bio, but the best we can do it is you're an author, journalist, Forbes.com contributor, lecturer. You have a TED Talk from 2018, which is magnificent, especially in the first minute.
No. I wish I could cover that. Maybe I can for members. TED Talk is really harsh with their copyright, but it's not. So maybe for members we can do it.
And master's in sexuality studies with a focus on intersections of body size, race, and gender.
Wow.
That is how I would summarize
That's how we would summarize you in the best possible way. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Thank you for reading up on all that.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of things.
Yeah, because body size is totally involved with all that, right? Gosh, I wish we could be a fly on the wall in that class. Like, I wonder what they're saying there. Don't you guys wonder? Gosh. I wonder if there's like a textbook or something. But that sounds crazy if there's a class like that.
Like, I've got a million jobs.
That's what we were.
Don't we all? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You're like, you are everywhere,
Yeah.
and I love that.
I feel like I have a million jobs. I don't. I have 2, but for me, 2 is a million. Okay.
I love the trips and the podcasts and the books and the education piece, and you're just like doing it.
Yeah.
We're so proud of you.
Out
like
there.
it's so good. It's so good.
Thank you.
So, how would you describe yourself in one sentence?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I want to answer this because I'm going to make this about me. Thanks. No, I'm just kidding. Kidding, but not. How to describe myself in one sentence? I'd be really scarred if somebody asked me that on a podcast. I'm kind of sick still, as you guys know. I would say, is it career-wise or personally? I guess as far as YouTube, I would say I'm an anti-fat acceptance activist. I'm somebody who struggled deeply. Oh gosh, that's not one sentence. Okay. I'm a person who struggled with toxic ritualistic behaviors, aka E followed by the letter D, who clawed my way out of the depths of it and fights that same logic that I see in fat acceptance. Might be a little bit of a run-on. If I was to say personally, I would say I don't know. I would just say I'm a girly pop. I'm a Swiftie girly pop that loves, that's into astrology and whatever. I'm kind of basic. Actually, it's a little bit weird. I'm basic, but original at the same time. That's what I would say. That's really gay to say. I'm very gay, I guess.
I think like both my professional and personal life are very interconnected, and they're both committed to doing my part to end weight-based discrimination.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of just like how I summarize what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're out here doing that. Absolutely. We when we were looking at reviews and what people had to say, the people that get it, and the ones that don't. And I want to know what your thought is on that, because you can't educate everybody. You can put it in the world, and people can choose to read it or choose not to. How do you silence those voices to keep your work on track and doing what you do and show up the way that you do in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's sort of a multi-prong approach. Like, on the one hand, I think what's weird, and I kind of just want to name this, right, is like, you've got the people who are like never gonna get, like, I mean, I've got like incels who hate my guts, and they just hate women. They hate, like, they really feel like the government is supposed to, like.
Okay, so I'm gonna let her finish her thought, but remember her work is primarily around fatness. So is fatness womanhood? If somebody doesn't like fatness, does that mean they don't like women? It's an interesting question, because as far as I can see, I'm not a woman and I'm fat. So I don't know.
Distribute them like a wife or something. I'm like, we're just right. That's never gonna be a thing. Like, you're never gonna get me. Like, there's nothing that I can say that you're not gonna demonize.
Yeah.
Because I'm like pushing for women's autonomy, which you don't want, right? Essentially. Yeah. And then you've got the people who.
Is fat acceptance a movement for women's autonomy? Let me know what you guys think about that. I would say no, because it tends to be fat enforcement. So it's not actually about autonomy at all. It's usually about image, in my opinion. I did pause for a second, but I had to give my opinion because that's what I do here. So I would say no, fat acceptance is about image-based reinforcement of being fat. That's what I would consider it. Not about autonomy. If it was about autonomy, then they wouldn't care if you lost weight. But they do.
Who are essentially like basically the exact same politics, and yet they hate you with like a passion that's like somehow even more personal than the incel. I'm like, the incels just hate like women. Like
Yeah.
I'm like any woman who talks is like someone they don't like. And they
Absolutely.
generally just are like, generally you guys. And I feel like I'm like, wait, the people who like have 99.9% political overlap are the ones where it's like, oh, like like I mean I get it too, but like it's like so personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand how you can get so deep in the weeds that like
Hold up.
you've got the people who are essentially like basically the exact same politics, and yet they hate you with like a passion that's like
Okay.
somehow
So she's talking about other, pretty far lefties that hate fat acceptance, which, again, Virgie, you're struggling here because your fat acceptance thing is not political. It's a disorder. It comes from a disorder. You can make a class about it. You can write a book about it. You can do all these things, but it's still a disorder. It's not politics. Your policies don't make sense in the context of weight. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. None of it does. So I could see plenty of people of all political perspectives not agreeing. In fact, you may find pretty much the entire spectrum does not agree with fat acceptance. It's probably one of the most unifying things. Pretty insane to think about, but I'm not at all surprised that there are people on the left that don't support it. There are plenty of left-wing arguments against fat acceptance if you're going to view it from a political perspective, which I do not advise, so I'm not going to offer those arguments because I don't engage in politics with this issue because it is not political and I will not play by fat acceptance rules whatsoever. Point being, I'm sure there's plenty of lefties that don't agree with you, Virgie, because it's not political. So having 99% of overlap, that should tell you something. Hey, maybe this thing that I believe in, it doesn't really have a political connection. Just a thought.
even more personal than the incel. I'm like, the incels just hate like women. Like I'm like any woman who talks is like someone they don't like.
Absolutely.
And they generally just are like, generally you guys. And I feel like I'm like, wait, the people who like have 99.9% political overlap are the ones where it's like, oh, like I mean I get it too, but like it's like so personal.
Yeah.
So I understand how you can get so deep in the weeds.
I think for a lot of them, it's a problem of being associated with fat acceptance when they don't want to be associated with it. And you guys really force yourselves into that in a way that is not organic whatsoever. I don't know how else to say that. Again, I don't think fat acceptance fits organically in any political discussion. You guys have seen me on this channel. I've had issues with both sides of the aisle and how they talk about this, pretty much all sides, because this is not a political issue. And when you try to frame it that way, the messaging tends to be off. It tends to not work. It tends to fall flat. And it tends to be divisive for really no reason and no benefit. I understand that within politics there can be division because it's about getting certain policies done and about all this stuff, and they're trying to win an election and all this stuff. But when it comes to obesity and fat acceptance and these types of things, it's not helpful to you're not trying to win an election when you're talking about fat acceptance. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. There's no real controversy behind this. Like, it's not actually a good thing to be obese. It's not controversial. They act like it is, but it isn't. So it's kind of just known. It's known on basically any level or any lens that you look at it. If you were to look at it from a scientific lens, if you were to look at it from a religious or spiritual lens, if you were to look at it even from a political lens, like I said, there are right and left wing arguments against fat acceptance, which, like I said, I will not engage with because this isn't political. But if you were really trying to frame it around that type of moral framework, whether it's religion or politics, there's plenty of reasons within that landscape to not be obese. Tons, actually. So it doesn't work in that context either, Virgie. It doesn't. Like I said, I don't talk about it that way on this channel for very specific reasons, mostly because we're here to get to the meat of the issue. We're here to bring this to an end. I'm not here to use this issue to push a different cause or to push a different narrative or whatever. Like, most people that talk about weight or fatness, not all, obviously there's anti-FA and stuff, but on YouTube and all that. Like, I'm not trying to say everybody that does, but most people that do not specialize in this content or do not specifically talk about this, they are typically using the issue to support an overall thing. Whether it's, you could use the two opposite examples, whether it's fat acceptance or like whether it's feminists using fat acceptance to promote feminism, or manosphere being against fat acceptance to promote the manosphere, or, manosphere talking points. It can go, people tend to use it, and I've seen that a lot. I don't appreciate it because you don't get to the issue. So it just tends to be talked about. Fat people hear it. They'll hear it through whatever political or religious lens that they have. They'll likely either accept or reject the message depending on what they believe already, which again, there's no correlation to belief in terms of fatness. That needs to be made clear too. And they'll either outright reject it or they'll say, yeah, I agree, but nothing changes because there's no real, I want to say, tea brought to the discussion. There's no real meat brought to the issue. The actual focus is not on the problem. I see this all the time on Jubilee, which is one of the reasons I cannot stand the Jubilee discussions about weight, is it always turns into an extremely emotional conversation where health issues are never acknowledged. And I understand that this topic can be emotional, but it's very frustrating when we completely leave out the body and physical reality as a part of the discussion. And yes, there are people that are on Jubilee that try, but it always goes to feelings and, politics and whatever. It just goes up in the air, and we need to always remember to keep it on the ground. Now, this year I have been talking a lot about the mind, but it's still the mind in regard to this issue specifically, because we're talking about the issue, the actual problem, which again, so many people that are in politics, they will do anything to not talk about this issue. So all that to say, I understand, Virgie, why they don't want to be associated with you. I get it. Because with the way that they view their politics, fat acceptance does not fit into that, and you're asserting that it must. And that is frustrating to people. It's extremely grating. So, yeah. And you guys also don't have any real arguments. So it's very frustrating to people. Extremely frustrating. So, yeah. Let's continue on.
It's that like one small difference can kind of lead to very...
It's not a small difference. It's a huge difference. It's completely denying all forms of reality. It's denying a lot when you are into fat acceptance. Like, it's going straight into some kind of a delusion, and to act like it's not a big deal, or it's just like, oh, it's just this one little difference. Like, no, like if you genuinely think it's healthy to be like 420 pounds, you've left a lot of things behind to get there. Like, you've thrown a lot of stuff out with the bathwater. Okay? So no, it's not a small difference at all. It's a huge difference, Virgie. I forgot how bad she is. I honestly forgot. Okay.
Strong feeling. So I want a name that it's like I think that both require slightly different psychologies or slightly different things or tools.
Absolutely.
I think kind of overall my feeling is like I think I have like layers of feeling. So I guess the first one that comes to mind is like I think I learned not that long within the last 2 years, like I can't like people are going to have different opinions.
Yes.
I can't let anybody tell me who I am.
Oh, I love that.
And so I think like, you know, and it requires kind of this like flexibility, right? So for example, I've certainly had people who have said things like, you're not a person of color. And and it's like one of those things where I'm like, I look back, think back, day I was born, my life, where I grew up, who I grew up with, what language I grew up speaking. I'm like, I think those were the criteria, right? I think I fit all
I actually think all of those are a checkbox, yes.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay. And then, but I'm just like, you know, and to kind of hold, like, to this person, I am not who I am.
Right.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
I can hold that, and I can also hold that they're not going to change what I know I am.
Yeah.
And I think
Okay.
that
I can understand what she's saying from an activistic perspective. 1 second, I have to cough. Because sometimes I get extremely frustrated with people too. Like, I really cannot stand it when somebody tries to tell me what I think about something. When I specifically say something and then they say, well, you secretly believe this. Like this one person was tripping about my thoughts on Ozempic. And they were like, well, you're secretly this about it. Or you secretly have this feeling about it. I'm like, I don't secretly have a feeling about any feeling about Ozempic. I say exactly what I feel about it. I said I'm mostly neutral. And there's a lot of times online, which I don't know what is up with the internet sometimes, but people cannot handle neutrality whatsoever. So if you're neutral on something, they project the opposite view onto you and then they fight with you over it. And I'm like, it's very frustrating to me because I like to argue, like, as far as like intellectually, I guess. I like to intellectually argue, but it's very frustrating to me because when I don't have a strong stance. Like I've told you guys, I don't have a strong stance on Ozempic. I can see both sides of the issue and I hold a neutral space. I can comment on my own usage of it, but even for myself, if I had severe diabetes, I would consider using it. Otherwise, I wouldn't. That's very neutral. So while I like to argue, it's frustrating for me to argue when I don't have a strong stance on something. So I get very frustrated when people try to tell me what I believe about something. And I don't know if that's somewhat similar to what Virgie was saying. I guess it kind of is. It's like, and that does happen in activism. So I guess I can relate to her on that level. I get that. People don't necessarily see you for who you are all the time when you're doing activism. I mean, you're literally trying to change minds and people get frustrated by it. So I get it. You know, I always say, like, it would be easier to grow or whatever if I just talked about this issue in the same way that everybody else did, or if I kept, you know, opinions on things like keto or seed oils or Ozempic, or if I kept certain stances to myself, or if I just tried to be very generic or, you know, a lot more broadly appealing. But that's just not my style. And I'm not even shading people that do that. I think we need all kinds of voices. I've told you guys, we need all kinds of voices in this. There has to be people who have a more broad appeal. Obviously, you know, there has to. But there also has to be someone like me who's not afraid to ruffle a few feathers, or who's not afraid to change the conversation, or to change the way that people look at this, or to attempt to change, because somebody's got to be a mover and shaker too, and I'm not the demure girly pop. I'm a brat. I'm a brat girly pop. Like, it's different. It hits different. So when you're when you're an activist, remember, an activist is trying to change minds. And I'm trying to change hearts and minds on this issue of obesity. I'm trying to change the conversation. That's not always easy. So I understand what she's saying from an activistic perspective, and I think that it is important. Again, although this is definitely not a political activism channel, this is a cultural activism channel. It has to do with changing the cultural narratives and cultural conversations around this issue so that it can actually be solved. Because I have a lot of knowledge on this issue. I've lived it for many, many years. Like I said, lived and died by it, But I'm always going to be supportive of as many diverse opinions and people and whatever talking about anti-FA, because we always have to have different kinds of voices so different kinds of people can hear us. And it can continue to grow, which it's done so well. It's done amazing over the past few years, and I hope to see it continue. I really, really do. Even though I do predict the fat lash of 2025, I do think they will strike back. We'll see who the real ones are. You guys better keep fighting. I want to see none of y'all giving up. None of the anti-FAs giving up. No, no, no. But anyways, that's my thoughts on that, I guess. So I understand kind of what she's saying. It's happened to me too, but that's just, I think she's just talking about activism, which I can relate to her. Although obviously I literally have the exact opposite activism as her.
Very much. Like that was probably the hardest one realization, that like even people who I respect or adore or admire the work that they do, no matter what, like no matter how much I love them or like them or think that the work they're doing is important, they don't ever get to tell me who I am.
No. Absolutely. Yep.
It's not just an incel who doesn't tell me who I am. It's like the highest, most respected person in my life also doesn't get to tell me who I am.
Right.
So I think there's sort of like that, and just being really clear, like these are my values, this is who I am.
Yeah, I think it's just really important. Like, I'm totally, obviously for me, you guys know, I'm good with like being brat or whatever, not listening to people, especially when it's necessary. But I'm also like, you have to make sure you're not delusional. Like, if you're not going to listen to people, you need to make sure you're on point, and you need to make sure you're rooted in reality. And Virgie clearly is not. So that can be a huge issue too. Like, even though I can be a brat, even though I can be rebellious and all these things, I listen to a lot of diverse perspectives in my life. I have almost everybody disagreeing with me a lot. Even my own mother, there are certain like, activistic points where, we've argued about it, or even things when we've discussed E followed by the letter D, like, I have arguments, I have rigorous debate, even with certain people in my life. And, I try to keep my comments as open as possible and, these kinds of things. And I try to look at what fat acceptance is saying. I look at the other side of this issue a lot. I reflect on it deeply. And I think about all different types of perspectives on this, because it's important to not be in an echo chamber as an activist too, because you have to try to understand where the other person's coming from. And I struggle with that sometimes. I sometimes do, because for me, this issue is so deeply personal to me that I can at times be overrun by emotion. And while it can be compelling, I have to be careful that I don't get out of control with it, because I'm trying to, help solve this issue. So it's like I have to listen too, to even to people like Virgie. And sometimes I have to put myself in Virgie's shoes, for example, to try to understand or try to remember. It's not that I don't understand a lot of the time. It's that I don't remember all the time. And it's disturbing. It's a disturbing disorder. So it's hard sometimes to do that, but that's the work, and that's how you kind of do it. And if I can handle that, which I think I can, and I have, it's fine. I can do it. But that's often where I'm kind of riding on that line. It's like I need to show the passion, show the emotion behind it, because they often use emotion for this battle. It is a very emotional movement. So I try to show emotion in the opposite direction, because a lot of people don't, and I can. So I do. But I also have to make sure that I don't go too far with it, or, get out of control, or like the message starts getting too garbled, or these different issues. And I'm not always perfect. You have to remember, you guys, I am learning too as I go through this as well. And I do think I've learned a lot this year in terms of activism. I learned a lot last year. I'm just going to keep getting better and better, basically. But it is, there have been a lot of times where there's a fine line. And then especially dealing with that within the context of my own hormonal fluctuation. It's been pretty wild at times. But like I said, it's been something there's nothing I'd rather be doing. I'll put it to you that way. It's been such a passion this entire time. So I always am so just grateful for everything, honestly, in terms of this. But yeah, I guess we're doing a little bit of a year review here. I didn't know I was going to do this, but we'll do that, I can kind of do whatever. We're just doing whatever right now, you guys, because y'all are the real ones, so.
And I think also hard one and very connected to that is like, I am living the life that I know is driven by my values.
Absolutely.
And I have to ultimately, right, I think at the end of the day, what it is you have to be the most important witness to your life.
Yes.
Oh, I love that.
I have to be the person whose witnessing counts the most to my own life. Otherwise, it's like really easy to get caught up and kind of chase like these different things. So that's kind of the highest order. And then I would say a lot of times, sometimes it's they're like, I've used this analogy with a few people before. Like if someone came up to me on the street and like stepped to me and was like, you shouldn't drive because you have a uterus and that makes you inferior. And I would just be like, LOL, okay. Like,
have a good life.
Like 1937 called and they want you back. Like, I feel like I've been able to adopt that attitude about like other things where I'm just like, I would just loll at this if you were telling me any other thing that's archaic, from which all of our current beliefs stem, right? So like all of the belief that women are inferior, it's completely connected to diet culture. So if I wouldn't accept that you don't think I can do something on the basis of like having a period.
What? That is a really weird point. So she just said all misogynistic beliefs are rooted in diet culture. Did she really just say that?
The other thing that's archaic, from which all of our current beliefs stem, right? So like all of the belief that women are inferior, it's completely connected to diet culture. So if I wouldn't accept.
Okay, she's saying it's connected, not that it comes from it. Oh my gosh, I don't think she can acknowledge that a man can go on a diet. I mean, that's really weird. Isn't that crazy? But that's my thing too. Like, I just try to show you guys how shoehorned this is into political discussions. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make any sense. So a man, in her view, has never been on a diet. I mean, she'd try to say probably a man is doing a diet because of misogynistic views, because of something. That's quite a mental gymnastic. Oh, I'm like, okay. I don't get it.
That you don't think I can do something on the basis of like having a period or something like that, then I'm not going to accept that you don't, like, what your opinions are about like
Anything
my
else.
body size.
Absolutely.
They're like completely connected.
Absolutely.
And then I think that the third thing I would say is like,
I don't see how it's connected. I just don't. I think that connection is so fragile that it's really difficult to try to force that to be a thing, because to try to frame obesity as a woman's issue to me is crazy. Like, legitimately crazy. Like, you have to be straight up delusional to actually think that. Like, there's so much of reality you'd have to just completely cut out of your brain to think of it that way. In a way that it's kind of comical. It becomes almost laughable. It's like, wow, what a freaking joke. That's wild. I just can't even with that.
So I think there's like the kind of like, you know, the hierarchy of values answer, which is there, and then there's also kind of the dismissal answer. And I guess like the third answer is for people who don't get it. And I think the people who don't get it but would benefit from getting it, I just have to say, like, you know, I'm just like, this wound is so big.
Yes.
I understand why you would hold on to something that's too painful to excavate.
Absolutely.
What the heck? Okay. So that's her way of dealing with people who disagree with her. I mean, I don't know. I think that's, you know, I have to always say, like, when I do my activism, who I'm typically arguing towards or for, it's not typically somebody who's in fat acceptance. My goal is to prevent people from going into it or to help support people who have left it. That's really my goal. My other goal is to help people who are very big to understand that they can lose weight and that it is possible, because I understand how impossible it can feel, especially from a super morbidly obese perspective. So those are really the groups that I'm really speaking to. The other group that I'm speaking to is also people who have not struggled with weight, but have people in their lives or who care about this issue in general and want to understand more about what it's like and more about the barriers to weight loss and more about what is actually preventing people from losing the weight and keeping it off and these types of things. So it's also people who just care about this issue and want to know more about it. That's also who I'm speaking to. I have so much love and joy in my heart towards people who are arguing, you know, for people that are within fat acceptance, people that have a lot more softer of a touch than I do. You know, I would consider that to be Sam at Every Size. You know, we hear their names a lot. I like Megan Ann as well. They've really been able to speak to people that are in the movement. I also, you guys know, I just have been watching Angelica, and I think she's really finding her place as somebody who kind of in those two worlds where she can speak to both sides of it. So somebody who's in it and somebody who's just left. I think that that's incredible because I can't. I don't have that, like, trust me, I'm a super femmy girly pop. Like, I have a soft touch, so to speak, in life. But when it comes to rhetoric and like argumentation and debate, I don't. I don't have a soft touch with that. It's not too hard of a touch. Like, I think I have a pretty decent balance, but it's not that soft. And, you know, in layman's terms, I can be a bit of a bitch. I'll put it to you that way. You know, in gay version, I can say I'm a brat. And that's okay. That's my place. You know, I will be more aggressive against this issue because it needs to be fought. But I so appreciate people that have a softer touch. And to a certain extent, I also appreciate people that have a harsher touch, because there are people that need a much more harsh approach than what I provide too, you know? So I think it can all work for sure, because while I don't necessarily agree with the super harsh approach from a super morbidly obese perspective or from the toxic ritualistic perspective, I do agree with the harder approach for people who are obese, you know, really in that category, are just kind of overweight and just need to get it together, you know, or who are closer to the goal. Because people that are harsher, they can do really well with helping people be motivated. Because I've talked a lot about how within obesity, I've noticed the reduction in motivation. It's harder to be motivated at this size. So I can understand people going for that drill sergeant type of vibe in this stage. And I would possibly even suggest it for certain people, especially people who are less emotional or less sensitive. I think that it can totally work for them too. So again, I'm totally into all of these different perspectives, because it's really important that we speak what's true to us in this movement. That's my opinion. And also for you guys too, who are not necessarily activists, but if you are talking to people in your life, or, you know, trying to argue this issue in general, be genuine, like be who you are. It makes it easier if you have pushback, because when people push back against me, I know for me, I haven't been too harsh for me personally. And I know I haven't been too soft for me personally either. You know, if I felt like, gosh, I just didn't do enough there, or if it felt like, gosh, that was just too nasty, I never feel that way, because that's just me. So it's really important to be who you are when you're engaging with this rhetoric, because it will help you to survive pushback. And I will always say that to a certain extent, I can agree with Virgie that you can't let fat activists tell you who you are when it comes to this issue. You can't allow that, because they will try to do that. And you do have to have a little bit thicker of a skin, because they will attack your appearance. They will attack shallow things, because that's what they're most insecure about. So they project that onto you. And so they try to hurt you a lot of times with that, with the shallow things. So just be aware of that. But I would say it's easier to deal with pushback if you're being yourself. Like if you're not a super nice person and you're trying to be nicey nice all the time and people are being nasty to you, it's going to really piss you off. And if you are a super nice person and you've been like really harsh, you're going to feel really bad. So I really argue to just be you, because your voice is necessary and your voice is helpful. It may not be helpful to every single person, but it will be helpful to those who need to hear it. So I really, you know, I just want to keep saying that. Just be you. I found my home is definitely central in this, where I feel like I'm in between harsh and soft. I'm dead in the center, and I feel like that's what works for me. And I'm going to keep doing it. But I value people that are softer and people that are harsher in this movement. I think both can work for certain people in certain contexts. So, anyways, gosh, we're really diving deep on this. Sorry, I'm like really reflecting here. I appreciate you guys. If you guys are appreciating this. If you're not, then I hate you. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, this might actually be a longer series, but at this rate, I'm talking a lot. I got a lot to say. Virgie, you're really getting me to say a lot, so I appreciate it.
That feeling too, where I'm just like, oh, you're traumatized. I'm traumatized.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sitting here trying to do the therapy, read the books, meditate, do the thing that I think on one level, like a lot of us, I think on this planet um, or should be doing, or like destined to do, or meant to do. And some people, though, most of us, most humans, don't ever want to look at that trauma because it's extremely painful.
Yes.
So I'm just like, okay, like we have different approaches to trauma.
Yes.
We probably, like, I'm the kind of person who, like, I look back at my
Yes,
childhood.
your approach to trauma is to stay within a toxic ritualistic coping mechanism, which is not something I could ever, like, support, ever. It's not something that I judge because I've done it myself, but it's something that I can never support, and I will always actively stand against it, as I've told you guys many times, and as a lot of people have probably experienced. These toxic ritualistic behaviors, they could have killed me. They got close. They're not cute. They don't end anywhere good. It goes to very dark places. And it can take a while to get there. But for me, it was not that long, put it to you that way. It can also, I always tell people, and I remember I used to say this back when I was Smo and I was doing this. I used to say, you're okay until you're not. Because people think that your health will slowly degrade over time to a point where you'll catch it, but that's not the way it works. What happens is you get these little warning signs, and then they go away, and then you think it's okay again. And then you reach a certain point where it's just too much and your health collapses. And I've seen a lot of stories of people that did either end up losing the weight or that ended up passing away. They had that experience where their health collapsed. And it's really important. I try my best to tell you guys about this and to try to warn so that you turn it around when it's easier to turn it around, or you try to prevent it from getting that bad, or when you're in it, you start fighting it now, because you have to take it seriously. And if you're still okay, like, you may not stay that way, and you don't exactly, like, we don't really know when it will hit. For me, it hit me at 28. It hit me like a truck. My health totally collapsed at 28 years old. For other people, it could be later. It could be 38, 48. It could be later. But it depends. And luckily, I was still able to turn it around. But it took me years. And I had to... Honestly, I've had to sacrifice some of my younger years to get it together. And I don't want people to have to do that. Don't be as stubborn as I was. Now, Virgie, she is as stubborn as I was. And I don't really have faith in her. I know that that's harsh. I would hope that she would turn it around, but I don't have faith in her. I don't. I know that that's awful to say, but if she's ever going to change, in my opinion, it would be because she hits a complete wall, health-wise, and it would be that reality check, which I don't want that for anybody, including Virgie. I don't. But it's just, I've seen the rigidity in the mindset, and I've experienced it. And when it's so deeply ingrained, it's almost impossible to get through to somebody like that. And it scares me. And I don't have all the answers. I hope I find an answer for that part of it, like when somebody's that deeply in it. Because for me, honestly, it was only my health that got me to stop. And I don't want that to be anybody else. I just don't. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go through what I've been through. So a lot of times, I think because my health collapsed a bit younger, I see where the Virgie Tovars are headed. It's like I've seen the future. I've stared into the eye of Sauron. I know what comes after this. And it's awful. And you have to, like, if you get to that point, you have to want to live. And you have to fight to live. And it's very intense. So I don't want people to go through that if they don't have to. Because, you know, while for me personally, it definitely helps my activism and I feel like I can get something from that experience. And I feel like I can understand like very low levels of this. And as I go climb my way up, I can understand like pretty much every level. So it helps me in terms of my activism. It was a horrible experience and it was very traumatic in and of itself. And I think it should be prevented at all cost. In the vast majority of people, it should be completely prevented. So there's a reason that I took this up as my cause, you know. It's not something I decided lightly. It's something I really thought about. And based on what I have been through, I was like, I have to help in any way that I can with this issue. And that's why I chose it. That's why I'm here. And why I'm here pretty much at this point, come hell or high water. I don't know, you know. But no. Anyways, let's continue.
And I want to process it.
Yeah.
The person who is like fighting on behalf of fat phobia is likely has very different values than I do. I'm like, you probably have had adverse child experiences that you don't want to excavate, and that's your right. And so I just sort of think, you know, it's like it's almost like a value's different. We just treat trauma differently, you know?
And that's okay. It's okay to treat trauma differently.
Yeah. And I think it's scary. I mean, it's scary when you realize, when you start thinking about like, okay.
It's not okay to treat trauma with a toxic ritualistic behavior set. That's not okay at all. It's not okay to treat trauma with any super unhealthy coping mechanism. It's not okay. So no, I disagree with you completely. It's not always okay how we deal with trauma. That's a crock of bullshit.
I want to change. I want to reach for more. And oh shit, I've got to actually face my trauma first.
Right.
You know, because the journey up already seems hard. Climbing the ladder seems hard. But what you don't realize is
there are so many unhealthy ways of dealing with trauma. And I think fat acceptance is definitely one of them.
It's so freeing, and you become weightless in general, right? In terms of just like the weight of the trauma, right? Whatever it is. And so part of what I was going to ask you, because I thought
it's such a lie. This is such a deception. Oh my God.
Incredible. I've always wanted to write a book because of this reason. You talk about in your book, you have the right to remain fat, where you kind of go through like the story of your childhood, right? Yeah. The pivotal moments of when the trauma happened, how it was, and obviously your writing is so good that I felt like I was right there. I felt like I was you.
Yes.
And then you go through.
Maybe I should look at that. I need to do books in 2025 for sure. I need to do books. You guys have mentioned some books, and we need to do some throughout 2025. So I think I'll probably have like a day of the week where we read books. We kind of will do that all year. Look at me formulating, thingy. Maybe we'll try to do something over January. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out. But I need to plan better. Gosh. I need to start planning for January. But yeah, I need to do books for sure. Because we should probably do her book. I want to know about her trauma. I do. You know, I think it's important to understand. And again, I don't ever want to judge somebody for that kind of stuff whatsoever. It's not at all in my interest, but I will absolutely judge how the trauma is being dealt with.
through this period of moment where you walk into this, you know, seminar, you were there and you saw everybody in bigger bodies having fun and having joy, and they were all together, and they were wearing the one that you said you were like, I'm gonna be her. It's like she's in her bathing suit and she's just
someone's chasing her with a parasol.
Right, right.
That
And
to me, the visual. And it's so freeing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to explain it. As a photographer, there's such a different energy when you get fat bodies together. And it's a joyful moment where you're photographing fat bodies and they're able to interchange clothes.
Oh my God, this is so crazy. I don't agree with that. That is crazy. We are just people, you guys. We're just people. Not the energy of fat bodies. Oh my gosh. That is crazy. I mean, massive over-identification with weight, I will just say. Crazy projection onto that too. Like doing that, projecting that onto other people.
And we're all sweating together. And there's just so much liberation in the community of bodies that look like yours, because we've always been othered, right? So it's always this just like constant state of being othered,
It's just a constant state of obsession is what it is. It's an absolute obsession. And I understand that. Like I said, it's a part of a disorder. Being obsessed with how you look. It's not okay. You know, in this case, being obsessed with size, it is a part of those toxic behaviors. It often fuels that. That's why it is kind of dangerous to do it. Like, I'm not one to be like, oh, everything is dangerous. Like, I'm not really that kind of girly pop. Like, I can be sensitive, but I can also be not sensitive. You know, I told you, I'm mid in general. So I kind of can understand like people who aren't sensitive, and I can understand people who are. But when I say it's dangerous to obsess over your size, I mean it. I'm not just saying that. I'm not just being dramatic. I'm not being funny. It's dangerous because if it slips into affecting how you eat, that can cause death. It can kill you. And regardless of where it goes with that, it's very dangerous. So you don't want to obsess. Do not obsess over that. It's not healthy. And gosh, I wish I knew that as a teenager. I really do. Because guess what? I was obsessed. And, oh, I wish I knew that. So I will say that to the rooftops. Do not obsess. Don't. And you don't even realize you're doing it all the time. You don't even realize it. She probably doesn't even know how obsessed she is. But that is such an obsessive statement.
I got to wear what I'm going to wear because I know I can't go to my friend's house and change my skirt or my shirt, or I have to have extra stuff in my car, or I've got to make sure I've got my anti-chafe cream and my hickey stuff in my bag because I'm going to be sweaty and smelly, and that's just who I am. Like, there's just this constant state of being othered that I think your book hit on such a place of, we just talked about nostalgia.
Okay, that's not othering. That's having to deal with the maintenance of being super morbidly obese, which, yes, that is very inconvenient. It is very inconvenient to be super morbidly obese. As I said, you have to have an entire mental matrix to survive in that state. So what she's talking about there, that's that matrix. I have to do this because then this and that. And like, I remember for me, I'd always have to think about seating and like seating in a car, seating at the restaurant, like, and obsessively thinking about it. Like, even this past summer when I flew on a plane, I had a complete triggered moment And I was obsessing over, am I going to be okay on that seat? And having a full-on anxiety attack over it on the entire way to the airport. It was horrible. But it was something I had to experience, so I could see that it had changed with the weight loss. And now I don't think I'll feel that way I probably will never feel that way flying ever again. But it was something that I constantly had to think about. And what if I break this? And what if I break that? And oh gosh, like I still, like when I step on a wooden step, I still think about it. But when I was super morbidly obese, I constantly had to think about things like that all the time. It's a part of the matrix. It's that, people love to talk about food noise. Let's talk about fat noise. Because it can be very loud when you have to consider all these things all the time. And then, God forbid, something does happen, like you do break something, or you do smell, or, something, because then you obsess over it. And then that becomes another weapon you use against yourself. It's awful, and that's within the disorder. But in terms of, like, in general, even if you didn't have the disorder, it's extremely inconvenient to be super morbidly obese. It's very, very inconvenient. And even if you don't have the disorder, you have to constantly consider it all the time. All the time. It's exhausting, honestly. And I am so glad that that's done. So glad. Whew, gosh. I guess I'm going to have to definitely split this up in parts. I really have a lot to say, don't I? I am a chatty Cathy. I am really on one. So I guess we're going to continue this later. Gosh, I had a lot to say. Virgie really, she triggered me today. And I'm just kidding. No, she just got me to think a lot, which I think is good. But I'm going to go ahead and end it there. So we'll end this on this first episode here. I will talk to you guys again next week. Like I said, I'll probably do more of this next week. I'll have to see. Maybe I'll just try to finish this out or something, maybe do something like that. And then, go back to normal. I don't know. I'm going to have to think about it. But I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. Whatever. There'll be at least one of these next week. Because I'm not sure if I'm going to post. Yeah, I probably won't post the rest of the week. So I'll probably do one more of these on Monday. And then I'll take that time off for Christmas. And then I'll be back to normal. Then we got to go hard. Hard in January. So maybe we'll do daily. Let me know what you think. Let me know I wonder if I'll die if I try to do that. I'll be like, by the end of January, I'll be like, anyways, I will talk to you guys later. Have a good rest of your day, night, etc. See you next week.